Lauri Järvilehto comes there. And it's nice that we get a view to the creativity and what's happening there. So Lauri will tell a little bit more about Aalto. But Lauri is now a professor of practice there at Aalto University. He is running the Aalto Ventures program, which is the educational program for the whole university about the entrepreneurship activities. Besides that, there is also Aalto Entrepreneur Society, which is student-led thing. So, but now this is more the institutional part what Lauri does. But he has a background of entrepreneur too. He has been putting many companies on. He put, for example, Academy of Philosophy. That was one of his things, I think 10 years ago already. And then some digital companies, what he's running. He's also in UNICEF Finland, and then running this program at Aalto University. And also he's a musician, an artist. So that I think that Lauri is quite interesting person. And now I would like to give the word to Lauri and tell a little bit about you and then your story.
Thank you, Kari. So yeah, hello everybody. Really great to be with you here in this new kind of weird world we're living. So yeah, my name is Lauri Järvilehto, and I'm a professor of practice at Aalto University, and like Kari said, I'm the co-director of Aalto Ventures program, which is in charge of the entrepreneurial education happening inside Aalto University. So before I go into the actual topic at hand today, which is the philosophy of creativity and entrepreneurship, I would love to tell you a little bit about like, you know, how Aalto University is structured now, and why creativity and entrepreneurship are both very important themes for us, and also how we at the AVP Aalto Ventures program are driving these themes inside the university. So like Kari said, I've been involved in a bunch of different types of endeavors. So the weird thing is I've now been a little more than a year at Aalto, and this is actually, so I'm 42, and this is the first day job I've ever had in my life. So basically, until then, I was an entrepreneur for 22 years. My first company was a music business. As you can see, I actually had to escape I have 5 small kids, so I had to escape them from my study to this little studio I have here at home. So I still, you know, dabble, and I'm a hobbyist, but for the first 10 years of my professional life, I would make like songs for stage recording artists and produce records for labels and do TV tunes, and I was a conductor at one of the biggest theaters for about a year when I was 24. And then I went back to school, got myself a PhD in theoretical philosophy, and started this second company, the Academy of Philosophy. Then I had a short-lived technology startup, started working also with this company called Rovio, who made the Angry Birds game. And then together with the founders of Rovio, we started this learning game company called Lightyear that I ran for about 2.5 years. And then eventually ended up here. And at AVP, our thinking is that we want to teach the mindset and capabilities of an entrepreneur to all Aalto students and all people involved in the Aalto community, which consists of roughly 20,000 people altogether. But more than that, we are now moving on to a new strategic period at the university, which is super exciting from the point of view of creativity, entrepreneurship, and especially on having a real impact in the world. Because basically, like, you know, having worked in the startup ecosystem for several years and having been an entrepreneur for more than 2 decades, one thing that has really struck me is that basically, especially the startup ecosystem is full of these sort of grandiose, highbrow missions of saving the world, when in fact we are creating applications for rich Californians to get their matcha lattes faster. So basically, there's a huge discrepancy between, you know, what is an actual real positive net impact in the world and what startups say that they're doing. And actually, you might want to look this up, because today Slush, the leading European technology conference, released a white paper about where the ecosystem is headed, and they actually underlined these themes of diversity, inclusion, and purpose through real impact as the sort of like the future of the startup ecosystem. And at Aalto, we have, I mean, Aalto, first of all, is at the heart of the Finnish startup ecosystem and the Finnish innovation ecosystem. And all of these phenomena you might have heard about, like Junction, Europe's biggest hackathon, or Slush, Europe's most important technology conference. All of these things have actually been started by our students. So Aalto, the first 10 years of the university, created this thriving ecosystem, and now moving forward to the next 10, we want to put this firepower to use as a force for good. So if we take a look at how the university is structured, so about 10 years, a little more than 10 years ago, our biggest art school, our biggest technology university, or University of Technology, and our biggest business school in Finland fused together to form Aalto University. So altogether, all these three universities have a background, I think, going all the way to late 19th century or thereabouts. But Aalto University, as it stands today, is roughly 10 years old. And the interesting thing, when I started working in this position, given my background as an entrepreneur, was that I realized that actually the very DNA of our university is perfectly suited for creating new startups. Because these three verticals that created this university, art, technology, and business, are precisely the thing that you need to have in the sort of ideal startup founder team. If you don't have understanding of art, philosophy, the sort of like the higher thinking there, you might end up just creating something very banal, very sort of like, everyday that nobody wants to buy. If you don't have technology, you can't really build a scalable business, which a startup needs to be, without technology. And obviously, like, it goes without saying, if you want to start a business, understanding business might, be a good thing to have in the team. But what makes things even more exciting is that in addition to these three verticals that are perfectly suited for startup teams and that have already given rise to this, what I would venture to say is one of the most thriving startup ecosystems in the world, even compared, like, I would even say that we're not like Silicon Valley, we're actually even better than Silicon Valley, because the Finnish ecosystem is not hyper competitive the same way as the American ecosystem is, but rather hyper collaborative. So we have the same sort of go-getter mentality. We have our unicorns. We have, companies like Supercell that's valued, that's the only decacorn or company valued, unlisted company valued at 10 billion in Europe altogether. All of these companies have come from this, like, interaction with these three verticals. But on top of those, in our new strategy, we have also introduced three new horizontal functions, or what we call the strategic cross-cutting themes, who we are now starting to implement throughout the entire university, namely radical creativity, so the capability of really venturing outside the box and think about disruptive, new, useful, and radical ideas. Entrepreneurship, basically taking these three verticals and directing them to solve actual problems that a customer may have, and sustainability. So Aalto University has actually now recently, about a little less than a year ago, signed this UN SDG Accord, or Sustainable Development Goal Accord. So our university, the entire 20,000 people of brain power, is committed not only to act sustainably, but actually to put our brain power to use to solve these pressing problems in the world, which leads to this phenomenon where we can actually we at ABP lift people from all of these three verticals. We build multidisciplinary, multi-dimensionally diverse teams out of them. We apply radical creativity to create sustainable innovations, specifically in the fields of the Sustainable Development Goals. And our vision at ABP is that roughly 10 years from now, these 20,000 heads of fantastic, phenomenal brain power will have organized so that we have actually a sustainable development goal solving machine in our hands, which means in practice that we are able sustainably to give rise to new startups, out of whom some become financial successes through catering to some of the most pressing problems of the human race on the planet. So this is kind of like, I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of, like, the direction we're headed from at Aalto, and especially at ABP, and also to give a little bit of background to the next actual topics of the philosophy of entrepreneurship and creativity. That is the topic at hand today.
Lauri, there was a question, if you could go a little bit slower.
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah, I can't see the comment field. I don't know why I can't.
Yeah, it's in chat, but I tell, but it was, if you a little bit slower.
Yeah. Let me see if I can. Okay, now I think I have the chat here. Yeah. Okay, nice. So if you have any questions, just don't hesitate to put them in the chat, and I'll try to grab them as we can. And yeah, I may up the pace a little bit when I get excited. So if you feel that I start going too fast again, don't hesitate to put in the chat like the dude, slow down a little, whatever, and I'll definitely then do that. But that's that about Aalto University and ABP. And let's head on now to the actual topic at hand, which is philosophy of creativity and entrepreneurship. Now, the first question is like, why does any of this really matter? Why don't what do we need creativity for? Why do we need to have an entrepreneurial mindset? Can't we just get good day jobs and keep on doing whatever we're doing? And the problem is that right now, this spring, we have all tangibly seen how the world surprises us, how the world changes around us and pushes us into this new normal. So even before the Corona pandemic, we already were seeing signs of an accelerating pace in technology. So basically, technology is increasingly changing the way our markets, our financial markets, and our job markets change. And at the deep down, the reason to this is that technological change is driven by the pace and locality of information. So yet, 100, 200 years ago, information, aka ideas that could be applied into become, products that could then be sold to a market. Information was highly local and very slow. So that meant that, if you came up with a great idea and then, told it to 10 people, the idea might, in the scope of a year, maybe, reach the next city or thereabouts. If you made a book about that, printed a few hundred copies, you might be able to reach an adjacent country in a matter of months or years. But the pace was slow, ideas didn't combine together, and the reach, even at its very best, was quite low. Now compare that to the situation today, or even like 20 years ago. So now we have internet, we have hyper-connected globe, we have billions of people with mobile devices where if you have an idea, you can post it on Twitter right now, and 2 seconds later, somebody in, let's say, Australia may see that idea and go like, whoa, now I understand. And that might germinate into something like, some amazing new innovation in Australia. So basically, the way the information is now hyper global and hyper fast has created this phenomenon where new technologies, new solutions to problems, new ways of building companies arise at a more and more rapid pace, which feeds back into this equation. This is why we're seeing the exponential curve happening with technology. And what this means in practice is that our markets are going to change, what people want to buy, what people can sell, what people can produce, and our job markets are going to change. So what is going to be a viable job in 10 years from now? Actually, we think about that a lot at the university because we'd love to teach those things to our students that are going to be valuable in 10 years from now, but nobody knows. Nobody knows, not even like us, like the professors at the university, we have no idea what we should be teaching. I mean, should we teach coding to our students? I mean, we teach coding in a bunch of classes at Aalto. But I mean, the algorithms of 2030 may be written by algorithms. That's, actually a perfectly feasible, possibility. And if that were to happen, all of the coders that we educated would be not just out of jobs, but they wouldn't have, anymore the kind of capability of applying what they know in the job market. And this is why we need to change. We need to become more dynamic. We need to become more creative, and we need to become more entrepreneurial. What that means in practice, that instead of trying to predict life, we try to look for opportunities every day and convert those And a couple of weeks ago, it really struck me that the best way to define is an entrepreneur isn't somebody who starts a company. You can also be what we call an intrapreneur. So you can act in an entrepreneurial way, but inside, your day job. So the entrepreneur is actually defined best by the way we relate to problems. Now, the corporate way to think about problem is to try to avoid them as much as we can. So stick to routines, stick to your old ways of doing, and try to avoid problems. Don't make mistakes if you can. Whereas an entrepreneur, when they see a problem, they go, interesting. I mean, with how many businesses are born is that a person with an entrepreneurial mindset gets upset about something. They get peeved, why is this done in such a stupid way? Hasn't anybody really solved this? And an entrepreneur goes towards a problem rather than away from the problem. And we go towards the problem armed with radical creativity, armed with innovation, armed with the capability of doing something that nobody has ever done before yet, but that we can be the first pioneers of doing. And in so doing, if we put applied imagination to use, applying creativity to serve a customer base by solving a problem that's a real problem for them. If we do that, that means that we all are also inevitably going to fail. And the entrepreneurial way of thinking about failure is not to find the guilty party or the scapegoat first, but the entrepreneurial way of dealing with failure is actually to try to think about what went wrong, what can I learn from this, and what can I do differently next time. A great example of how this is done in practice is the Finnish company Supercell. I mentioned them already, valued at some point over $10 billion, which is crazy. They produced 5 games. They make about $2 billion of revenue every year, almost $1 billion of profit, and they only employ 300 people. And how is this possible? Because they have been able to capitalize on their failures. So they have been able to really double down and create a meticulous process that whenever they kill a game, which they've killed dozens of, they analyze what went wrong, why that game didn't work on the level that it did, and ultimately these learnings are shared with every single employee of the company, which means that the company, even if they fail, they learn, and when they learn, they become better, and when they become better, they can solve these problems of creating world-class, amazing free-to-play games better and better every year. And this is the entrepreneurial mindset that you can actually put to use by going at a problem, trying to solve it the best you can, solving in this quick iterative manner, which leads me to the final point for the talk today, namely the Eric Ries lean startup model, which I think is not just an entrepreneurial model, but something that we could actually bring into our entire lives. So instead of thinking that we need to create the perfect product and refine it and spend years in the laboratory or in the writing chamber or whatever, creating that thing, we should create something that's good enough, something that's almost still the draft really, and then bring that. Or Eric Ries talks about this minimum viable product. So, Reid Hoffman, the founder of LinkedIn, he once famously said that if you aren't embarrassed about your product when you launch it, you're too late. So you need to build something, then push it to the customer, push it to the market, and then measure what happens. This is what's great about game development, that with games we know these 2 or 3 metrics or parameters that we need to get right if we want to make money with the game. Basically retention, conversion, and the customer acquisition cost. And if we get this balance of these things right, you can make even $1 billion from one single mobile game. Now we need to have some metrics to measure the performance of our product. And now, if we are at the level that we want to be, great. Let's launch. Let's bring in the pomp and circumstance. Often we're not in the first phase because we're launching early. So we learn from the metrics. We build further. We measure. We learn. We build. We measure. We learn. And this very same principle can also be applied in our everyday lives to navigate these black swans, to navigate these exponential technological progress. Namely, we can also do this type of activities in our everyday life by applying the entrepreneurial mindset, by applying the creativity, by doing something, seeing what happens, learning from that what happened, and if it didn't work, doing something differently. And most emphatically, whenever we fail, we should take a deep breath, sit down and do some kind of an analysis, like write it down. Supercell, actually the team lead gives a presentation to the entire company about what went wrong. You can do that by writing it into your diary or having a kind of a post-mortem session with your team or whatever, but make sure you have a system of pumping out the learnings from when you fail, both as a team, as an organization, or as an individual. And if we're able to apply creativity in our everyday lives, in our works, in our organizations, if we're able to not try to avoid problems, but identify them and go towards them to solve them with the entrepreneurial mindset, then this, the whole world that's kind of, becoming crazier and crazier every day doesn't become a threat to us, but a wonderland of opportunities. And this way, what we're thinking about at Aalto University, when you take a look at the 17 Sustainable Development Goals that yet 10, 15 years ago, people thought that couldn't be solved at all. And now we're seeing like absolute poverty cutting half of what it used to be 15 years ago. We're seeing massive progress there. And armed with creativity and entrepreneurial mindset, I'm 100% certain that we can start solving these most pressing problems of the humankind and really create a kind of world where we can really feel like, creating new stuff, making awesome stuff happen, and making the world better in so doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lauri. That was impressive once again. So are there some questions now from the audience? I see that there are comments.